Hi, I'm Coach Joe from the Summit Endurance Academy here today to talk to you about some Skimo drills. So first off, if you aren't super familiar with the transitions of Skimo racing or light touring, go check out our Skimo Transitions 101 video. If you're all caught up, then let's rock and roll. First, we're going to talk about the drills themselves. There's several. Next, we're going to talk about the differences in practicing these indoors versus outdoors. We're going to spend a little time talking really specifically about how to fold skins. Finally, we're going to wrap up with how and when to use these drills. When to do indoor, when to do outdoor, what time of the year to do, how many of them, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so our first drill is the prep drill. The prep drill is aimed at getting you better at all of the prep things. So as you enter a transition zone, there are things you should do inside the transition zone, things you have to do inside the transition zone, but there are a lot of things that you should do beforehand so that you spend as little time in the transition zone as possible. These are things like goggles and zippers and pull straps and all that kind of stuff. So in preparation for this drill, what we are going to do is we are going to basically put everything into skinning mode. Boots and bindings and put skins on and all that kind of stuff. And then we're not going to mess with any of that stuff because we're not practicing the transitions themselves in this drill. We're practicing all this stuff before. So we want to get into a mode where we can walk around or move around. And then that's how we're going to start this drill is we're going to start this drill just kind of like marching or spinning around in a circle or walking up and down the halls or however that is. And then we're going to imagine that we are, say 20 or 30 yards from a transition zone, and we're going to figure out our own nice sequence of making sure our goggles are up, making sure our zippers are ready for the transition, making sure our pull straps are off, making sure that our glove covers are off. If we're thinking about a backpack transition, we're thinking about finding our backpack hook. Now, importantly, all of these things are, this drill is fairly transition specific. So you want to be thinking about probably a specific transition that you are prepping for. And as you move into that, so for example, you're going into a boot pack transition, you don't need to worry about a zipper. You pretty much need to worry about your goggles and your goggle covers and your pull straps, and then finding your hook or your strap or whatever that is. So importantly, what we're doing is, again, we are moving and then practicing getting so that we are at the transition zone and already ready for the transition, so that we have done all of our prep work by the time we get there. And so success with this drill means that you can, without thinking, arrive to the transition zone ready for the transition. Our next drill is called toes. Maybe I'm just not very good at naming drills. But, so what we're trying to do here is get better at getting in and out of our bindings. And so we know that this is, especially as we're learning, this is a challenge, right? It's always tough to get in, it's always tough to get out. And so what we're doing here is getting rid of all other skills and simply doing just that. And so what we're doing here is we're also challenging definitely a lot of our flexibility and a lot of our strength. Depending on your size and your body type and all that kind of stuff, it can be kind of a challenge to spend a lot of time with your hands down by your toes. And so that's exactly what we're practicing here. So in this drill, you're gonna your skis are going to be, everything's going to be in skinning mode, and you're basically just going to stand on top of your skis, holding your hands on your skis, and you're going to step into the bindings, and without your hands leaving the skis, you're going to press down and release the bindings on both of your skis, and then you're going to step out, and you're going to leave your hands down, and then you're going to step back in, and you're going to press your bindings and step out, and then you're going to step back in. So importantly, our hands are never leaving this low area. They're never leaving the skis themselves, and so we're getting some flexibility, we're getting some strength, and we're getting a lot of practice just, learning how the bindings work, figuring out what those sweet spots are, all the angles and all that kind of stuff. Importantly, this drill is fairly challenging, especially if you are not flexible or not strong. And you will see, and because of that, those not flexible, not strong people will see some really huge results from this fairly fast. I like to do this drill fairly early in a session because I feel like it's kind of a really good warm-up. It gets you ready for all the other drills. It kind of gets you, in fact, it gets you really, really warmed up. As you'll probably notice, you can't do it for too long. You could probably only do this drill for a minute or two before everything starts to get kind of fried. So I like to do this a couple different ways. One, if I know that this is a skill that I really need to be working on a lot, I'll do kind of intervals with this. I'll do it on for a couple minutes and then off for 30 seconds and then on for a couple minutes and then off for 30 seconds. Or what I might do if it's just something I want to touch on, but if I really want to work on some flexibility, then I will do this drill sprinkled throughout a drill session. So I might do, this drill first or second, and then in another 10 minutes, and then in another 20, another 10 minutes after that, or something like that. Okay, cool, have fun. Our next drill is called, you guessed it, heels. So heels is meant to practice essentially the first couple important maneuvers in your skin to ski. So basically what we're doing here is we are kind of learning, especially if you're new to a pair of boots, it's kind of tricky to figure out where those angles are where the cuff can release, right? If we have too much weight forward or too much weight back, it's hard to get those cuffs to release. We're also trying to figure out, in a really like habitual muscle memory kind of way where the little binding flaps are. And then we're worried about flexibility, right? Like, as few as any of us spend a whole lot of time touching our toes, touching our heels, especially in a stiff boot, is even something a little different. So basically what we're going to do here is we're going to have our skins on. We're in everything is in skinning mode, everything's in uphill mode. And all we're going to do is stand up straight, and then we're going to drop down and do boot, boot, binding, binding, and then we're going to stand back up again. So we're not gonna like lock into our bindings or any of that sort of stuff. All we're doing is practicing the boot, boot, binding, binding, boot, boot, binding, binding, and then we're going to stand up, and then we're going to go back down, and we're going to reset everything, and then we're going to stand up, and then we're going to repeat, and we're going to repeat that over and over again. So stand up, boot, boot, binding, binding, stand up. Replace everything, and then repeat. Now, if you are one of those people who does your transitions all on one side at a time, so boot binding skin, practice that way in this. So do a boot binding and then lunge back, and then a boot binding and lunge back. Now, importantly, what we're doing is we're taking out all the rest of the parts of this so that we can repeat those tiny little movements over and over again. And we spend a lot of time with our hands around our heels, again, building muscle memory, building flexibility, and making these skills a real habit. Our next drill is teams. This drill is all about learning and practicing with skins. Just getting a lot of repetitions of both ripping and folding and tucking, but also taking the skins out and putting them back on the skis. So lots of practice. As you might have suggested, might have gathered by the name, this requires 2 people. So what you're going to do is you're going to start with all of your gear in uphill mode, and you're not going to mess with your boots or your bindings. You're just going to stand there in uphill mode, And you're going to rip, fold, tuck, rip, fold, tuck, zip. Then you're going to get out of the skis, you're going to unzip, and you're going to leave those, you're either going to hand the skins to the other person or you're just going to leave them on the ground at those skis. And then you're going to hop over into the other person's skis. And those skis should be the binding should be in uphill mode and the skin should be on. And then you're going to do the exact same thing. You're going to rip, fold, tuck, rip, fold, tuck, zip, get out of the skis, unzip, get rid of the skins, and then repeat. Because as you have been doing this, the other person, we'll call that person the skier, has been taking the skins or the skis that you just ripped, you just took the skins off of, and they are going to put the skins on. So this person is going to accept the skins from the skinner, put them in their jacket, and then probably not zip, put them in their jacket, and then do the normal, put the ski in the crook of your arm, you're gonna pull out a skin, you're gonna half rip, you're gonna put the tip on, you're gonna lock, you're gonna rip down, you're gonna smooth the skin down, you're gonna put that down, and then you're gonna repeat that on the other side. So one person is always ripping the skins off, and then the other person is always practicing putting the skins back on. And you do that like that for a while, and then you switch. So you let one person practice all of the other things. So this drill takes a little bit to get right. Not to get right, but just to get into the swing of things. But once you do, it's really, really effective. Importantly, you can do this with somebody who doesn't know what the hell they're doing. You can convince your little brother or the neighbor or whatever to help you with this. And just make sure that whichever part you are doing at the time, you are practicing all the right stuff. And even if the other person's kind of just like, I got the skins on, they're kind of close. You can practice, you can get a lot of practice with that, even if the other person isn't a racer practicing those same skills. Our next drill, I just call skins. And basically what we're trying to do here is just kind of narrow down, take away all of the fluff and we're just practicing one simple skill, which is folding the skin. Now, folding the skin really well is important for a couple reasons. One, for skin management. The better that you fold your skin, the more tightly and glue to glue those skins are, the less moisture they're taking from your body, the less snow that they're going to pick up, and the better that they're going to stick later in the race. We also want to be folding our skins really nicely because, again, as we talked about in the last video, we're worried about not just the speed of this transition, but also how fast is our next transition going to be. So if we fold our skins really consistently, then we always know how we're going to pull them out. And we always know, it just makes the next transition much more consistent. So really all we're doing here is we are taking the tip of a skin like we have just ripped it. We aren't even going to worry about ripping it though. We're going to have an open skin and then we're going to fold it. And it's that simple. And then we are going to take another tip of a skin and fold it. So this can be done two different ways. My favorite is to have a partner for this. And again, this can be either another racer or just an innocent bystander. And basically that person is just going to take your folded skin. And so you probably need two. As you're folding one, that person is ripping one and they're handing you the tip. And then you take that tip, act like you just ripped it and fold it, and then hand it off, and you repeat that process. You can also do this if you have several pairs of skins. You say you have 5 or 6 pairs of skins, you lay them along on a table, open, and just grab one at a time, fold it, grab one, fold it, grab one, fold it, grab one, fold it, get through all of your skins, unfold, and then repeat this process. One of my absolute favorite additions to this drill is making athletes close their eyes during it. You totally should be able to fold a skin with your eyes closed. It's a great way to push the boundaries a little bit and just make it a real muscle memory and instinct movement instead of having to think your way through everything. Our next drill is one of my absolute favorites, especially for a more advanced athlete. This is called the quadrant drill. So basically what we're trying to do here is we are kind of refining our transition skills themselves, but more importantly, we're also trying to build ourselves a feedback loop for how well we are doing with our thinking about the next transition. And what I mean by that is in our last video, we talked a little bit in the principles about we want to make sure that when we do one transition fast, we don't screw ourselves for the next transition, that we don't, rob Peter to pay Paul, as the phrase goes. So what I really like about this drill is that it tells us if we have screwed something up in the last transition that affects us for this transition. And the way that we are doing this is that we are setting up either a quadrant, so think of like 4 boxes, think of like 4 square court, or if you don't have a whole lot of room, because that takes up kind of a lot of room, if you don't have room, you just spin in a circle. And basically what you do is you start out in uphill mode, okay? You stand there, you put your poles down, you do your full skin to ski transition. And then you grab your poles, you pick them up, and you move. You either move to another quadrant or you spin 90 degrees. You put your poles down, and then you do your ski to skin transition. And then you pick up your poles, and then you move. Again, either moving quadrant or spinning 90 degrees. And then you put your skis on your pack. And then you pick up your poles and you spin and you take your skis off of your pack. So you're getting 4 transitions in kind of one drill. And that's really helping you figure out, what are the little things that I'm doing in one transition that are affecting my next transition. And you're just getting a whole lot of really high quality practice with these transitions themselves. Cool. Have fun. Our next drill is just a fairly simple variation on the quadrant drill. So the idea, the premise is the same. We're just moving through certain transitions in an order in order to both get practice at those transitions, but also to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for the next one really nicely. And the focus of this one is the sprint. So instead of kind of, like the quadrant drill where you're just kind of doing all of the transitions, this one is very specific. So what we're doing here is we are starting out again in full uphill mode, going from skinning to boot pack transition. We're gonna again spin or move quadrants. And then we are going to really quickly do our boot pack to skinning transition. And then we're going to move or switch quadrants. And then we're going to, and this is one of the kind of the key difference from the quadrant drill, is we're going to do some form of messy transition. One of our double rip or our fancy, or however it is that you like to do your final transition. And then you're done. So again, on pack, off pack, double rip. And then you're going to use that last quadrant to, fix your skins because they are a mess right now. So those are all of our drills. Now we want to talk about a couple different things. And the first is when practicing this indoors versus outdoors. So the first thing that we really want to keep in mind when we're practicing this indoors is that we want to use the same top that we do outside. Now this might also be true if you have Dynafit boots and you're worried about, like the clasps at the bottom. You might want to practice with your normal suit bottoms, but for like the Scarpa boots, it doesn't really matter. It's not going to affect the movement. So the first thing is again, we want to make sure that we're using the clothes that we would outside so that we're practicing with the same motions. We have the same zippers that we're fighting with. We have the same interaction with the zipper and the sternum strap and all that kind of stuff. Next, we want to think about what our floor material is. If we're on something like, if your living room is like hardwood or something like that, then obviously we don't want ski edges to bang that up. So we want to look for either a carpeted surface, or this stuff can be done kind of with a yoga mat. It doesn't work great, especially when you're practicing some of the messy transitions, some of the double rips. But it's better than nothing. If you have a hardwood floor or something that you're worried about getting messed up with the ski edges, then a stiff yoga mat works fairly well. Next, we want to think about a couple of the factors that make transitions difficult. And some of that is just a lot of other stuff going on. So there's a couple things that we can do. One, we can put on TV. Maybe we could even put on a Skimo race, get some music. The ISMF has some really awesome race recaps. So we can we can put those race recaps on YouTube, and there's a lot of good music, and there's a lot of people, running around doing super fun stuff. Gets you really excited, kind of get the nerves going a little bit. Another thing we can do is shots, either of alcohol if you're over 21, or some espresso or something like that, so that we can, over caffeinate a little bit. Kind of gives us that feeling of anxiety and a little bit of shakes, very similar to what we have in a race. So that's great practice. Another way that we can add a little bit of intensity to these drills and to this practice is we can do this either directly following or during a strength session. So we might even just make it a double session and do a bunch of push-ups and burpees and just kind of run around a bunch so that when we're practicing these drills, we're out of breath. Some of our muscles are super tired, that kind of thing. Next, we really want to be using old skins for this. And this is the perfect place for an old pair of skins that just doesn't have any grip anymore. You know, you've basically skied them past the point of them being sticky. They might still have some reasonable glue on the bottom, they might not, it doesn't matter. But those skins are your best skins to use inside. One of the things you'll find is that inside is much, much, much dirtier than the snow is. And so the glue on the bottom of the skins that you practice with inside is almost certainly going to be ruined fairly fast. They're just not going to work outside very well. And now you can always re-glue them if you practice with them inside quite a bit. But, you know, you might as well just use an old crap pair of skins so that you can get this practice in. And then the last thing that we think about when we're practicing inside, and particularly when we're practicing our messy transitions where we're just stuffing the skins back together, is we really want to use either an old suit or we want to use a jacket when we're practicing the stuffing the double ripped skins. Because there's a lot of glue outside that will catch on the suit or the jacket, and you can actually rip any of the newer, lighter suits. If you practice this a ton, you might actually rip that suit a little bit. So you don't want to do that. So there's some of the things we think about when we're practicing inside. Next, let's talk a little bit about folding skins. There are 4 or 5 main kind of ways to fold your skins, and I want to talk about these a little bit and some of the good and some of the bad of some of these things. The first, what we kind of see right off the bat and most people start with is what I call the ends. And basically what you're doing here is you're getting the skin off and you're basically holding it at the very end of the tip and the very end of the tail and just trying to put it together. Now you have really good kind of like distance, you know, like your hands can meet really easily, but you don't have a whole lot of control over the angle of the skins as they put together. So this one can be pretty inconsistent. And this is why most people start with this and then move to one of these other methods. Basically grabbing at the very, very ends of the skins, you just don't have a whole lot of control over how that fold ends up going. Next, you have what is probably seen the most on the World Cup. It seems fairly inconsistent to me, and it seems like it's only a touch faster, but it's fairly easy to get wrong. So, and that's called the slap. And basically that's, you know, you get a hold of the tip in your non-dominant hand, and you run your hand down the length of the skin until you get about 2/3 of the way down. And then you basically just slap that tail of that skin over onto the tip of the skin. And so you're kind of hoping, one, that you get your distance right, you know, that your tab is the proper right, and that you're kind of hoping that you end up with good alignment. So this one, again, I see it used a lot. I don't quite understand why, and we'll talk about some of the later ones. Next is what I call the middle, which is basically you kind of put your thumb on the middle of the skin. You might have a marker or some Sharpie or something like that on the middle of the skin. And then you grab the rest of the skin underneath where you put your thumb, and you basically just run your hands straight up, and then the tips and the tail kind of comes together, you know, kind of nicely like that. This is one you don't see very often. It looks kind of cool. You very often get your thumb stuck in the skin, and it can be fairly inconsistent. You also really have to know where the middle of that skin is. Next is the one that I am a really big fan of, and that's why I call it the sure thing. Because it might be like just a little bit slower than either the middle or the slap, but it's much more consistent. Once you learn to do it really well, it's pretty hard to get it wrong. And basically what you're doing here is you're grabbing, you know, say 6 inches down from the tip of the skin, and you're rolling your pinky and ring, or maybe even up to your middle finger around the skin, and then you're leaving your thumb and forefinger outside. So it kind of looks like a Spider-Man or something like that. And then what you're going to do is you're going to roll your hand over so that your palm is facing down. And then while you've been doing this, which doesn't take very long. You're grabbing the tail of the skin, and then you're going to move the tip of the skin over to the tail. And then you're going to just connect the glue right at the knuckle of your dominant hand goes into the palm of your non-dominant hand. And then your non-dominant hand, so now the skins are stuck together in one very small place. And what we're doing here is we're ensuring that the alignment is really good. So we have the skin attached above. Then you're going to take the non-dominant hand, and you're basically just going to run it down the length of the skin, making sure that the pressure is fairly light and that the edges are aligned properly. And then you fold, and then you make your second fold there. This transition, or this skin fold, is really quite consistent, especially once you get it down. So in my opinion, this is the best way to do it, but plenty of people use other methods. The last way to fold your skins is what we call the windy. We talked about this a little bit in the last video, but basically all we're going to do is, since it's super windy out, the slap doesn't work very well, and basically anything where you don't have control of every length of your skin, because it's super windy, makes it really tough. So what you're going to do is you're just going to add another control point to the middle of the skin by wrapping that skin around your knee. So you're going to grab the tip, grab the tail, get the glue to stick a little bit right under your kneecap, and then you're going to basically do some version of either the sure thing or the slap, and put the tip together and then run your hand down as you pull it off of your knee. And this makes for super easy transitions in the wind. And those are the kinds of ways to fold your skins. Last but not least, let's talk about how to put it all together. So we know that in order to get better at a skill, we need a large volume of practices. We need to practice the skill over and over and over and over again. And we also know that when we are out on skis, we spend a comparatively small amount of time transitioning. So this means that it's very important for us to practice these transitions outside of our normal ski training. We need to either set aside sessions where it's warm enough outside that we can just practice transitions and just practice these drills for, say, an hour, or we need to do this inside. I'm a big fan of inside because, especially in Colorado, most of the time it's too cold to get a really good drills and or transition practice session. So the way that I like to break this down is kind of by the year. What I would call late season, so April and May, when we're still skiing a fair bit, I don't really think that there's any reason to really practice transitions a lot. You know, we're staying in touch with the skill through backcountry skiing, through spring objectives. We might not be getting a lot of transitions, but we're maintaining a little bit. Next, in the off season, which is June, July, and August, again, we're not trying to really hugely build skills unless this is, really an area of focus for you. But we're not skiing anymore, typically. So we probably need to spend roughly an hour, just a couple times a month, just kind of running through the transitions, running through the drills, kind of staying in touch. Then when we get to the preseason, which I would consider September, October, November, this is when we really need to focus on this. And this is when I'm a big fan of 30 minutes twice a week. Now, we could absolutely do that time in like an hour every 2 weeks, but I like the repetition. I like the closeness of 30 minutes twice a week for most of the preseason. And then when we get into racing season proper, which for most of us is, roughly December through March, this is a time when typically as racers, we aren't very good about still continuing to work on the drills and to work on the transitions. We think, well, I'm outside doing all of this training and doing all of these transitions, I probably don't need to continue to work on them. But I think this is a missed opportunity. I think this is a time when we can continue to use indoor training to supplement and continue to really make these skills really strong. So during the racing season, I'm again an advocate for 30 minutes twice a week of indoor transition practice and drills. And the reason for this is that we don't want to practice until we can do good transitions. We want to practice until we can't do bad ones. Okay? That's our drills video. Thank you very much for watching. All of us here at the Summit Endurance Academy appreciate your interest in Skimo and in our product. Please write a review. Let us know what you thought about this. Send us a message, an email, a social shout out, or whatever, and follow us on social media: Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. Thanks. Have a great day.